How's it going, guys? Thanks for stopping by Moodog's Frugal RCs and more. Today we're going to be doing a range modification on the transmitter for the Promark Shadow GPS. Stay tuned, guys. Alright guys, it's modification time for the Promark GPS Shadow Drone transmitter. This modification will also apply to the Sjrc S70W as well as the Holystone HS100. What we're going to be doing today, guys, is installing a Wi-Fi router antenna on here to get better range off this controller. Like most controllers, in the toy grade and semi, I guess it would be semi kind of hobby grade almost for this particular one, you're looking at a real short little piece of wire for the antenna. So what we're going to be doing is opening this thing up. I'm going to show you where the antenna is soldered on. We're going to actually show you the process that we go through to strip back the wires, get the thing soldered in, attach it all, get it all mounted up, and then we're going to do a flight test, and we're going to compare it to the other flight tests that I've done before this. So stick with me, guys. When I get this set up, we'll be right back. Alright guys, so what we're going to be installing today is a Wi-Fi router antenna, and I got this package here on Amazon.com, and I'll go ahead and I'll put a link down in the description for you guys if you want to check it out. Pretty much any 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi router antenna will work for this application, and I'm using a 6 dBi range on this particular one. This comes in a 2-pack. It's from the seller on Amazon by the name of Hi-Fine, and I'm not promoting their product at all. I'm just showing you where I got it from. I don't get paid to say anything about their store or their product at all. This is just basically what I bought to use for this application. It comes in a 2-pack, so I have an extra one here. I can either modify the quadcopter itself or use it for another transmitter that I might want to modify in the future. Pretty popular modification. Let me get this out of the package here and show you guys what this is all about. Nothing actually too fancy or too earth-shattering to look at here, but we'll get it out of the package nonetheless. So it comes with the actual 2 antennas like this, and these are 2.4/5.8 gigahertz. So they're dual band antennas. They can be used for either application. So if you're doing a 2.4, in which case we are right here with the Promark transmitter, that will work. It will also work with a 5.8 gigahertz signal. So that's kind of a cool thing there, dual band. So I got 2 of these here, and they also come with the pigtails. Now these pigtails have to be cut. And I did do another video, guys, on a SEMA X8C quadcopter transmitter, I should say, that I did a modification to, and that's up on my channel, and I'll put a link in the description for that one if you guys have that transmitter. But basically it's the same setup on here. So you have your connector here, you have the male end connector. This would fit through the plastic on the back of the transmitter, and I'll show you where I'm going to be mounting that, and then the antenna would actually just screw right on here. Okay, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And then you have your pigtail wire here. Now the wire that it comes with is pretty good length. We're not going to need all of this. And you'll notice on this one end, you have a little jack on here that would actually be suited for a circuit board. You can see that's got a little pin on the outside, little pin on the inside here. Let me get this focus for you guys here. It's got a little pin on the inside. And then you have a little outside that's actually attached to the shield. So this is a shielded cable. We're going to cut this down, take some of this off of here, and I'm actually going to strip it back, and then I'll show you how we go about attaching that to the inside of the transmitter. So stick with me, guys. I'll be right back. Alright guys, taking a look at the back of the transmitter, you're going to see that there's 4 screw holes here, 2 underneath my thumbs, and I've also, just to let you guys know, I've also taken these out before I started the video, so these 2 are out. But this is actually the back strap on here, the carry handle if you will. It also balances the transmitter if you were to set it on its end. And then there's 2 screw holes up on the top here, very easy to take apart. So take this out of the way here, and we'll get that last screw out up on top, right in here, and we'll take that out. And I think this is magnetized enough to pull it out. It may not be, no, and it's not. So it'll come out actually when we go ahead and take this apart. And we're going to go ahead and just separate the 2 halves of this transmitter here by just pulling gently on the front and then separating the 2 halves like this. Okay. There's no wires because there's no batteries inside this transmitter. The battery is self-encapsulated, and I just dropped that. Sounded like I just dropped that screw, and I probably did. I'll have to search for that a little bit later on. But anyway, we're going to be attaching the actual antenna to the back here. So I want it to sit someplace where it's not going to interfere with the circuit boards that are inside the front half. Now this is the front half of the transmitter. We'll turn it over just to show you guys. So here's our front half of the transmitter. We don't have to take any circuit boards out of here. I should be able to solder directly to the existing antenna on here and not have an issue. But just to kind of give you guys an idea how this is made, the plastic on here is nice and heavy. It's very thick, a lot thicker than some of the other transmitters that I've had cracked open and looked on the inside of. This one does have a battery already built into it, so there's no batteries to deal with. We're looking at a 3.7 volt, 300 milliamp hour lithium ion cell right here, and that one is actually soldered right to the circuit board right here. So what we have to get to in order to connect this is right up on the top of this circuit board, right up on top here. Let me get my hand out of the way here and I'll show you guys. This is the existing antenna right here, guys. Okay, and it's attached in one point right here by this little solder blob here. And I'll see if I can get that to focus for you so you can see it here. But that's basically going to be the antenna that's installed on here at the factory. What we're going to be doing is extending this antenna and actually kind of almost amplifying it by virtue of using our Wi-Fi router antenna. So this is basically going to amplify our signal and and help our range out a little bit more on this quad. So this, again, I mentioned before that this modification is going to apply to the Sjrc S70W as well as the Holystone HS100. And again, this is obviously the Promark variant of that transmitter, but it all works the same. So the first thing we're going to need to do, guys, is get and desolder this. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and prep our antenna wire. And that's very simple. I'm going to get this set aside, and I'll be right back, guys. All right, guys, let me show you what we've done so far here while I was off camera. What I've done is I went ahead and I picked up a negative lead here, common negative lead from this point right here. We have an A1 plus and then an A1 minus on this back of this board here. So what I've done is I've moved this small little ribbon cable, this little cable out of the way, pulled it up, gives a little slack underneath there, pulled it up out of the way, being careful not to interfere with this little pin sticking out. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. And make sure you're not interfering with that small little pin there. That's actually the sweep on there to move the speeds up and down. So you want to make sure you're not interfering with that at all. But I did heat up the solder point here, use some flux, and I'm using a lead-free paste flux like this. You can buy it, pretty much any hardware store has it. And then I went ahead and I actually soldered that right over the existing negative wire to these two here. And you'll notice that the solder joint is shiny, is what you want to see. That tells me you have a nice hot solder joint there, and we're going to have a good connection. Now I'm going to be able to go ahead and solder on the cable that I've prepped. You can see how I've prepped this, guys. I'll show you. I'll see if I can get this to focus a little bit here. Now, there's no style points on this. All we want to make sure we're having here is a little bit of a wire on here, something we can twist onto the existing ground that we've prepped right here, and make sure that's good and tinned. You can see there it is shiny. I did actually prep that with solder and flux, so that's prepped nicely. And we'll go ahead and we'll twist these two together. And I'm going to use some shrink tubing on here just to make sure everything's insulated. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply that onto the wire that we've soldered in place here. And I'm going to make sure that these are tinned properly again. Tinned them once, but we're going to do it again just to let that solder flow. You want to make sure the solder is flowing properly and that it's actually joining the two wires and causing a good connection for you. You don't want to take any chances with anything like this, so that's why I'm kind of going a little bit of an extra step here. I'm going to bend this wire out of the way that I've actually already tinned and stripped back. So I'm going to bend that one out of the way. I'm going to straighten this one out that I've already got tinned and ready to be soldered to the other one that we've attached to the circuit board. And I'm going to put a little bit more paste on here because I rubbed some off with my finger. And I just basically just dip it in. Okay, you don't have to get a big blob on there, just enough to let that solder flow nicely. And I've got a little solder coil here. And we're going to go ahead and get our tip in place here in a second. First of all, let's go ahead and twist these together. And just take your time doing this, guys. You don't want to rush it. Wires can get a little bit on the brittle side, so you want to make sure that you're getting these on here correctly and you're twisting them up good. And then we're going to go ahead and apply some more flux to this whole mess right here. So we'll go ahead and get that flux going right here. And go ahead and just dip it in there. Now we can pick up a little solder on our soldering iron. And what I usually do is I will take and just dip this directly into the flux. And then pick up a little bit of solder from the coil here. And we're going to go right over to our part that we want soldered together. And just add a little on there. You'll hear it. There you go. And you'll hear it kind of sizzle like that. That generally means that it's getting a solder joint. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll inspect it before we put the before we slide the shrink tube over it. And it looks like it's on there pretty good, guys. And what I do at this point is I will either fold this forward. It's probably what I will end up doing is fold this forward to mimic the other end here, like so. And then we can take this part out, leave that on the outside, and then we will run our shrink tube up on here, and I'll shrink tube that all together like that to cover up that joint right there. So give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, so now that we've got everything shrink tube on here and I got this negative lead joint covered here, we can go ahead and either do one or two things at this point. I may end up removing this existing antenna off of the board here and then soldering this end directly to my board, which I think is going to be the smart way to do it. And let's go ahead and do that now. So the first thing we're going to need to do is take our hot soldering iron, and we're going to go ahead and remove the existing antenna. Pretty simple stuff here, guys. You're going to want to just kind of grab onto the end of this here, and using a little bit of leverage, pull up a little bit on it. I'm always dipping my soldering iron tip into the flux just to make sure it's kind of clean. We're going to go ahead and touch that on the end there, and boom, it's off. So that's all we would need to do. In other cases, I may go ahead and use this existing wire here and just kind of strip it back, tin it, and then attach our new antenna lead to it. But in this case, I think it's going to be more practical for me just to go ahead and solder this directly onto this little circuit board right here. And I think that's what we're going to do next. So give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to go ahead and get this prepped, and I'll show you the end result as soon as I'm done. Be right back, guys. All right, guys, so we're ready to go ahead and solder this last antenna lead. Now, this is the main wire inside of the shield here that we're soldering where the old antenna was. And what we're going to do is just go ahead and touch that on there, and we're going to go ahead and apply our soldering iron to it. And that's it. We're on there. Now, in order to anchor this down, to keep it so it's not moving around and it doesn't break in time, I'm going to go ahead and get my hot glue gun out, and I'm going to glue this down onto the board here, being kind of strategic on where I place it, leaving a little bit of a service loop on there. And I think that's going to take us to the next step, which is going to be drilling our hole to mount our antenna receptacle on there. So stay with me, guys. We'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and get that glue gun heated up, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing with that. 1 second, guys. All right, guys, so we've got everything pretty much ready to go. The glue gun is heated up. We've got glue in it, pretty much locked and loaded when it comes to that. I'm going to be gluing this down in several different places, the wire onto the board here. Being that everything is insulated, I don't have to worry about making any weird connections or shorting anything out at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and find a couple of different spots to actually glue down. I'm going to gently lift this wire up and put a pool of hot glue right about there. And we'll go ahead and lay that wire in, and then put a little bit over the top of it. And we'll go ahead and let that set up for a minute or two so that hardens up and holds that piece of wire down in its place. If you guys can see that or not, I hope you can. It's right there. So I can bring this any closer to the camera here. And again, we're not looking for style points here, guys. We're just looking for this to be held down into place to, you know, eliminate any chance of this wire moving around or jostling around inside the unit here and possibly causing a short circuit somewhere in the future. And I'm sure there's other guys out there that are doing these mods that may have a different idea on how to do this, and that's fine. Whatever works for one person may not work for you know, another person. So this is my take on it, having done several of these. This is kind of the avenue that I take a lot of the time, and I probably could have routed this wire a little bit differently, but it is what it is right now. So let's go ahead and move one more time, making sure that this is actually set up a little bit. Let me go ahead and just pause this for a second, and we'll let that set up, and we'll go to the next point. All right, guys, we're back. I wanted to show you guys now how I've actually attached this to the circuit board with the hot glue. And you can see on here, I've got several blobs of hot glue actually holding this wire down onto the board so it doesn't move around and stays in place. The solder joint, you can barely see, is up on the top here. And I could have probably run this a little bit differently, been a little bit cleaner with it. And in the future, I may, if I do another one of these types of transmitters, but I think all intents and purposes, this is going to get the job done. Nobody's going to see the inside of this transmitter. I'm not worried about that situation at all. This is one of those transmitters that's inexpensive enough where if anything would go wrong with it, it's inexpensive enough to just go ahead and purchase another one. Readily available again. I mean, there's several different labels on this from Holy Stone, from like I mentioned before, the manufacturer, Sjrc, and then you can also get another Promark one. All the same protocol, so there's nothing really different about them other than the screen printing on the front and maybe the colors. So what I've done is I've got that all actually anchored down here via hot glue, so nothing's going to be moving around. I've got the wire basically where I want to put it, and it's going to be running up along the top here. And that should give me ample room to actually attach it to the bottom of the other half. You can see right here. I've got that in, and I may end up putting a couple dabs of hot glue in there to hold that in place. I don't know. Don't think I'll need to, but you can kind of see where I've got that up on the top in that little channel there. And I went ahead and off camera, I went ahead and I drilled the hole that I'm going to be using for this, and I drilled it into the back of the plastic here using a 7/32 drill bit, which fits this particular connector on here. Now, if you don't buy this connector, you don't have to buy this connector. You may end up with a little bit bigger threads or bigger piece sticking through here to connect your antenna to, and then you'd be having to use a different size drill bit. But on the inside here, you can see I drilled it through first from the inside. I marked out the spot about halfway between the actual wall here of the Wi-Fi FPV mount and channel, and then this little button, kind of a knob here. So I went right in the center of that. The only thing left to do right now, guys, is to actually run that cable through on the top here and go ahead and attach that. I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll show you the end result when I'm finished with that, guys. So give me 1 second on that. I'll be right back. All right, guys, so we've got the antenna mount installed, and you can see it on the back here. If I can show you just briefly here, you can see it is installed on the back. I don't have the antenna on there yet. I wanted to show you guys the inside of this and kind of the reasoning for my madness here, the method to my madness. There's a method to everything, but you can see the antenna mount on the inside here. So essentially what I did was I held this nut in place with a bent needle nose here, and held that in place, and went on the other side with an 8mm 1/4-inch drive socket and just snugged it down. We're not building a bridge here, folks, so you don't have to ham fist this. Just get it on there snug. And what I do with these two as well, guys, is I'll take some hot glue again, and I'll go ahead with the hot glue on here, and I will go ahead and blob hot glue around the inside here. and that just kind of makes sure that it just kind of ensures that that doesn't spin around when we're constantly taking the antenna off and putting it back on again. And that may just be the case because I'm going to be, you know, putting this in a bag, and if I don't have the space in the bag to have the antenna, I got a couple other things in there, I may end up pulling the antenna off the outside and doing it that way. So I'll let this cool off and I'll show you guys the reason that I have everything routed the way I have it routed, and we'll go from there. So give me 1 second, guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys, just finishing up this last screw here, and we got that in. Everything is tight. Everything is on there correctly. We're going to go ahead and put that antenna on there. I'm going to go ahead and try to bind the quadcopter using my new antenna, and we'll see if everything's working out. I think if we get this thing bound up and the quadcopter actually recognizes the signal coming from here, I think we have a win situation. So stick with me 1 more second, guys. I'm going to get the quadcopter down and get the antenna on here, and we'll go ahead and give that a test. Hang with me, guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and install the antenna on here, power up the quadcopter, and then see if she binds up. I think if it binds up and recognizes the transmitter and they're both communicating, I think we have a win situation here. So let's go ahead and get this on here and get this in place. And we'll go ahead and fire up this quad and go from there. Now, when you guys are using these, if anybody out there has never done a mod like this before and you decide you want to do this, when you're using this out in the field, a lot of guys will have this straight up and down, which, I mean, probably would work, but the best way to get your signal out there is to have it almost perpendicular or parallel with the top plane of the transmitter. It's sending the signal out like this instead of out through the tip. So that's one little tip there to give you guys. So now let's go ahead and start up this quadcopter. And we have red flashing lights, and now let's go ahead. Moment of truth. Drum roll, please. Here we go. Oh, I think we have success, guys. Let's see if she'll bind. And there it is. So I think this operation was a success. This modification was a success. Again, I'm going to be doing field testing on this if I haven't mentioned before. I already have a video prior to this modification showing the range before I lost signal with the transmitter and the quadcopter started coming back my way. I will mention now that the fail-safes do work on this quad. Quite impressive. That's another video though. But everything seems to be working at this point, guys. I see we have a bound transmitter here, so you see this little icon on the left. That means we're bound up. Which is a good thing. So going forward, watch for a video of the range test after the modification, so post-modification. We're going to be putting all the parameters on the app. We're going to be burying the needle on all of them. I'm going to be taking this thing out and I'm going to be pushing it to its limits in distance and also in height. So we're going to test that out and see if this is an actual worthy upgrade. I think it's going to be, I really do, because when you start opening up these transmitters, as many as I've opened, and you see those little bean antennas, little wire antennas sticking in there, I mean, what is that really going to do for you? So now we've got this amplified via this antenna right here, and I think we're going to be in business with this quad now, guys. So if you guys like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Smash that like button. Subscribe, please, guys. It really helps my channel out here. Don't forget to hit the bell on the top right corner of my page here, so you get all my content coming through. Thank you guys for stopping by. Thanks to my new subscribers. That's pretty much it, guys. We'll catch you on the next video. God bless the Republic.